I'm Katz with Gallery Glass, and today I'm here to speak with painter Eric Diehl.
This painting right up here is called Beach House, and I painted this right after I got back from Fire Island this summer, but I've been dealing with these structures and these treehouse structures and playgrounds over the past 6 months, and I was fascinated that all of that part of southern Long Island was flooded by the hurricane, that everything was raised up on stilts, and so I raised up my own structure that I made up and pulled it up out of the water. It's just about finished, but I've been adding my own water slides and my own playground structures to these spaces as I've been inventing them. So they're a bit of a surrealist exercise where I don't exactly know where I'm going to end up, but I begin out of simple shapes, and that's where these bottom three ones here began as well. I started with completely abstract spaces, abstract shapes, and colors, and then from there I started inventing, where I put a window or where I put a ladder or some sort of structure to build up from there. But it's these three is entitled Candyland. It's a triptych, based more on this project of tree houses and playgrounds. So this is one of the first ones I did. This was right after the BP oil spill a couple years ago, and this actually came from a dream where I had an idea of a large structure that was built entirely out of 2x4s, which kind of goes back to my childhood where my father and I and my brother built a very simple treehouse in our backyard out of very simple 2x4s and plywood. And so in my mind, how to build something, even something so massive, is that of just very simple pieces of wood. And it's sort of a child's like idea of how something so massive would be put together. Kind of similar to an erector set or Legos and things you would play with as a child, as a more innocent child. And then last year I started moving on to pen and ink. I needed to get away from paint for a while because I was drawing a lot with the paint, and I wanted to step away and just draw with pen, purely with line. And so this is a map of North Brooklyn, basically from Greenpoint down through Bed-Stuy, from memory, from all the bike riding I do around the city to get around.
This is all from memory.
So it's all from memory. I've abbreviated each neighborhood, but a lot of the buildings in there are accurate and are specific buildings.
I think I see us.
Yeah. We're out there in Bushwick on the right side. You can see more of the factory structures and the water towers. But I have many actual specific structures that I put into there. The Pratt campus is there too. And then the top one is more of an improvisation. It's an improv from structures that I experienced as a child growing up in Pennsylvania, which is a very rural place where I grew up, and then moving to the city and having some city building structures as well as California's West Coast on the far right. And it was this journey from probably 6 or 7 years old, and just taking my mind through a journey of what buildings and structures I was around for the past 20 or so years. And then over here is what I'm working on currently. The top one up here is just the beginning of another desert scene. So I just put up a couple layers of washes there to kind of build up some sort of atmosphere and tone. That jagged edge is purely organic. I built up 20, 30 layers of mediums and gesso and let it spill over the edges, and then I kept covering it over and over again and sanding it down. It's a very tedious process, but I really wanted to have this organic, irregular border on these panels. And so then down here, I took a bunch of photos when I was out in Nevada desert about 2 years ago on a cross-country painting trip I did with my friend Jackson. And I started taking these images and sort of censoring them myself with the idea of the U.S. government recently actually declassified a bunch of files about Area 51, and that they've admitted that it's an actual place and it's an extension of
I read that.
Edwards Air Force Base. Yeah,
It's fascinating.
it is. It is. Yeah, they're not giving a whole lot of information as to what goes on there, but they've said basically that this is a place that exists. It's an extension of Edwards Air Force Base. So you can actually go onto Google Maps and see, I believe, more of the base, but you can't get into too much detail. So this is my curiosity with that. I've always had a curiosity with that in the desert, and so now I'm going on to this bit of a journey with these paintings now, with exploring the desert and the idea of structures you're not technically allowed to see and censorship. So moving over here is one of my other treehouse structures. This is kind of a branch off of the Candyland series and the treehouse series, but I did this about 2 months ago this summer, and I started with a few trees and a few planes, and from there I built up more facets and sides and created something that the main tree in the center is sort of blocking a view of something going on behind it. But I really like this idea of this two-tone water structure that I freehanded it pretty much, but it looks like more of a silkscreen. It has this very flat effect, but it was all freehanded. And that's a combination of playing with high-intensity chromos and then more naturalistic colors, with the red and the green being pulled out most intensely. And then down here I have, this is actually commissioned, but it's a birch forest that I had a client ask me to paint, but I had complete creative control over it, and I invented the whole space. That space actually doesn't really exist, but I had a lot of fun being able to compose something that looked naturalistic and irregular, and some place that you would find that's not idealized.
What was your inspiration?
Well, the birch trees was something I grew up around. I really wanted to include a birch forest. The landscape is very similar to what I grew up around, where I would go out into the woods, into a creek. So the way that the rocks are, the size of them, the scale of the trees, is something that I think mirrors definitely my early childhood experience. So it's something I couldn't quite get away from. But
So I wanted to ask you about, I guess, the style of work that you create. You experiment with very intricate, detailed work, a lot of pen and ink, but then some of the work is very simple, geometric, really bold. How do you feel about that juxtaposition, and do you have a preference for your creative process?
I think that each painting that I make, or what I'm trying to say, requires a different amount of color, and I definitely have some paintings where I've really limited the color because I need to for the specific message or what I'm trying to get across or what I'll focus on. The colorful tree houses, I think, is I'm making choices as far as color-wise that are trying to create some sort of a warmth and a familiarity, or a sort of attractiveness to sort of our childlike responses. I mean, all the toys we kind of grow up with have brighter colors, have more an intense chroma to them, and so that's, I think it requires with each painting. But yeah, I definitely have started pumping up the color more, and that was a bit of an exercise to help myself get out of a period where I was just getting very muddy and earthy and brown with everything I was making. And so personally, I just wanted to get out of that, and so I forced myself to start using more acrylics, actually, which was easier to create higher chromos.
You also experiment, with different mediums and different tools. How did you decide to, or how do you decide to do pen and ink versus the acrylics versus the oils?
Um, uh, there are two different ways of thinking in my mind. One is the line making with drawings, and with the paintings, I wanted to be able to create. There are different surfaces, like almost like puzzle pieces you're putting together, and really start using the paint as something to create surface and volume rather than just the line. So I was having I was having difficulty actually painting with paint. I was drawing with paint for a while, and so I took a break from it for about 6 months and just purely focused on drawing. And I really love the immediacy of drawing. You're able to come up with an idea in maybe one day, or you can come up with several ideas in one day that you can pick from to work on a painting. Because I've worked on paintings where I've spent 6, 7 weeks on just one idea on one painting, and in that 7 week period, I'll have so many ideas of other paintings that I want to do, but I just physically or just will not have the time.
Do you tend to work on one at a time, focus on just one painting or one series? Or
So, yeah, sometimes when I'm working on a large painting, I'll just work on that until it's finished. But usually, I have at least 4 or 5 paintings going on at once, for the most part.
you also range in scale. Do you have a preference for those really arduous yet beautiful large scale works?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I would work larger almost all the time if I could. I just love that scale. The relationship of the human to a larger piece is
Especially
just
with
really
your
exciting.
work, where they're based on these really relevant past experiences. That's sort of how you remember them, I imagine.
Yes, yeah, of course. Especially, yeah, with the larger structures, there's definitely, with the image itself, I'm trying to translate a specific scale, like a large scale thing with just the image. And so if you make the actual painting, yeah, the larger scale, it's just a more powerful experience, I think, when you're in the room with it. But a lot of the images I'm making also are I'm more focused on just the image, and the size doesn't really matter. So I will work on smaller paintings too, but I like to vary the sizes.
We didn't we didn't see any of this today, but you also do a lot of portraits.
Yes.
And while none of them are present, I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about them. Who your subject matters are. What period of your life did you create those?
Yes, actually, I put some of those away because I felt they were a little different than my current work.
Sure.
But a lot of them are people that I know personally that I'm interested in as artists in their own way, whether they work in painting or not. I like to paint people that I'm familiar with, that I know, because I feel like I have something I want to say about them. But I've also done portraits for people that are commissions paid for by maybe their family or something like that.
That's great. Self-portraits.
Yeah, it's a great experience to get to know somebody, because I do insist that people sit for me. I will work from photographs, but I require at least 6 or 7 sittings of 2 hours apiece. So it is a time commitment to sit for me to do a portrait, but it's a great way to get to know somebody, and then it just becomes a better portrait, I think.
This is Sam Katz with Gallery Glass. I'm here with Eric Diehl. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Sam.
Now give us a kiss. Love it.